Hi, I am former MUN President Peyton King from Maryville, Tennessee. I am currently looking up the showtimes for the Angels in America play happening at the Clayton Center of the Arts this weekend. This podcast was recorded at
3:51 a.m. on Thursday, April 24th, 2025.
Things may have changed by the time you hear this episode. For instance, I may have just discovered that there are 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. showings for the Angels in America play at the Clayton Center for the Arts from April 10th through April 13th.
Hello and welcome to the MUNPR Politics Podcast. I'm Caleb Lance, your host and vice president for the next 3 weeks. This is the second in a 4-part series on the 2025 UTK MUN elections, and in today's episode, we're going to be analyzing the results from our second round of polling. We're going to start from the bottom of the ballot and work our way up like we will on election night. So first, we'll take a look at the polling for Ethan Lindsay's confirmation as Secretary General of Vol MUN 11. To the shock of absolutely nobody, Ethan's overwhelming approval rating has not only held up, he seems to have won over the sole unsure voter, as we now have 100% of respondents in favor of confirming it. Next up, we'll jump to the Communications Director poll. Let's first take a look at our candidates from last week. So this has been a very good week for Mary Helen Shao, as she has skyrocketed from 17.6% support to 50%. Jenny Lynn is our only other candidate from last week who significantly improved her numbers, climbing from 11.8% to 18.8%. Reagan Murphy, last week tied with Shao, fell to 6.3% support this week, as did Avery Sinclair. First-year outreach coordinator Ollie McQueen polled at 11.8% last week, though she did not receive any support this week. Brandon Bishop and Lauren Turner both climbed 0.4 of a point in the polls, while Not Sure received no support this time around. It was a bad week for Nathan's and Nathaniel's, as both Membership Chair Barnett and Nathan Surdej dropped from 5.9 to 0% support. There was one new candidate who received support this week. Me. Once again, I will not be running, so we'll go ahead and move on. We'll save the demographic information for the end, same as last week, so if you want more detailed information on the candidate's support basis, be sure to stick around. Moving on to the membership chair poll, the field opened much wider this week. Tristan Fields polled at 29.4% last week and dropped to 18.8% this week. 17.6% of respondents were undecided last week, while only 12.5% remain so this week. Of the 3 candidates who polled at 11.8% support last week, Sinclair, Turner, and Bishop, Turner was the only one to gain support, going from 11.8 to 12.5%. Bishop dropped to 6.3%, while Sinclair did not receive any votes this week. The other 3 candidates from last week, Communications Director Kripa Patel, 10-month Secretary General Zane Howard, and Jack Henry, all did not receive support this week, and instead a wide crop of new candidates emerged. These new candidates received 6.3% support each, and they included Shao, Mia Piketty, First-Year Outreach Coordinator McQueen, Membership Chair Barnett, Treasurer Ryan Hahn, Murphy, Sam Payne, and myself. All but one of these candidates had their bio in the last episode, so if you want more information on them, check out episode 1. Piketty would be mounting her first campaign for office, and her most recent club positions were as SOCUM co-chair at Vol MUN 10 and JCC America co-chair at 10 MUN 1. Moving right along to Vice President, Membership Chair Barnett has significantly expanded his lead. Polling at 35.3% last week, he's risen to 56.3%, the only candidate besides Ethan Lindsay to receive more than 50% support for any office outright. Barnett's numbers are also helped by the ill fortune of his closest opponent, Treasurer Hahn, who lost the 23.5% support he had last week. 12.5% of respondents are still undecided, and another 12.5% support Fields. 3 additional candidates from last week are still treading water in the mid-single digits: myself, Brandon Bishop, and Secretary General Howard. Sinclair, Will St. Clair, and Turner fell from 5.9 to 0% support. And last but most certainly not least, we come to the presidential polls. This poll is the most similar to the previous weeks, though there are still some differences. Once again, I want to reiterate the fact that these races are all absolutely still up in the air, and a clear frontrunner today might not even run in the end. Fields, last week's top dog, increased his numbers by 2.2% to a total of 37.5%, while his closest opponent, Membership Chair Barnett, increased his by 1.2% to a total of 25%. A third candidate has broken out of single-digit support, First-Year Outreach Coordinator McQueen, who now is polling at 12.5%. Payne and Bishop remained roughly where they were last week, climbing from 5.9 to 6.3%. Treasurer Hahn, Secretary General Howard, Turner, and Undecided lost their support from last week, though 2 new candidates have emerged to fill the void. One of these is Reagan Murphy, whose bio has already been listed, and the other is Alexander Ward. Ward, a first year, would be running in his first campaign for club office, and he has twice served as a conference crisis staffer, in What Comes After the Czar at Vol Mon 10 and in the Brazil Committee at 10-1-1. I did take note of the important issues that some of you submitted on the form, don't worry, but I'm going to wait to address those because I want to be able to bring them up individually to each candidate when I interview them, either next week or the week after, depending on what they're running for. So 4 respondents indicated that they would like to see an amendment passed, and we'll take a look at those now. So the first 2 are written by yours truly. One would fully subsidize the vice president's delegate fee for every conference wherein they were a head delegate. The vice president is constitutionally obligated to attend every conference they can, and you all know how expensive even one conference a semester can be, let alone 3. I did the math at work this week, and since I was first elected in November 2022, I have spent over $800 on travel fees alone, not taking food, gas, or any other expenses into account. The only thing that would be covered by this amendment is the delegate fee, which is currently around $50. The vice president would still have to pay for food, gas, club dues, etc. My wallet and I certainly would have benefited from this amendment, and now that I cannot be accused of a conflict of interest, I would like to see it passed for whoever ends up in this job after me. My second amendment is to codify the junior CD system, which I think I can fairly say has been an unmitigated success. Of our crisis directors in the 24-25 academic year, Tristan, Lily, Jack Oliphant, Ahmad, and myself, everyone except me worked as a junior crisis director under a more experienced CD before running their own scrimmage, and the only reason I didn't is because that wasn't a thing before I was vice president. There are certainly still some kinks in the system to work out, and I trust that whoever the next vice president is can and will figure them out, but I think it's certainly led to better scrimmages and better trained crisis directors. Codifying training reforms is also something that we do have precedent for. This is not out of nowhere. The weekly practice meetings that we have, which are constitutionally mandated now, were originally a creation of Vice President Nick Bergman, my predecessor, in the 2021-2022 academic year, and that we amended into the Constitution after he had left office. And I think the club would benefit in doing so again in this case. The third amendment isn't really one amendment so much as it is a whole collection of them. Namely, it's all of the amendments that were suggested/advised by SCCS. I'm not entirely sure how much leeway we have and whether or not we actually choose to implement those or not. But for what it's worth, there's not any major changes, at least that I can remember. But you can fact check me on that when it gets introduced, hopefully at the meeting tonight. The fourth amendment is a request for someone to write an amendment swapping, quote, admin days and practice days, giving the reasoning that there are not enough opportunities to practice. It is entirely possible I'm misinterpreting the author's intent, and if I am, please, whoever submitted that, please correct me in the next poll, and I will issue a retraction on the next episode and clarify what you meant by it. But I think the author is recommending that we have a weekly scrimmage and a monthly meeting instead of weekly meetings and roughly monthly scrimmages. Maybe they meant switching the weekly meeting with the weekly practice. But we wouldn't need an amendment to do that because the day that they happen on isn't constitutionally mandated. Practices are on Tuesdays because that's when most people can make it, and meetings are on Thursdays just because they have been since before I came to UT. But if we wanted to do them on a different day, we could. Exec would just have to vote on it. We wouldn't need an amendment. As this unwritten amendment stands now, I don't think it's the best way to solve the problem. And there's still plenty of time to, edit this. This is I don't want to shoot this amendment down. I think it's coming from a good place. But we had a weekly scrimmage last year. In the fall semester, it was during and basically in place of the weekly Thursday meeting. And in the spring, it was in the place of the weekly practices. In the fall, participation was incredibly low, as anyone who was here for the rolling scrimmage can tell you, the Oregon Trail one specifically. As many of the people who come to weekly Thursday meetings did not enjoy an hour of committee simulation every week with no alternative. And in the spring, attendance was incredibly low, as few people came to an hour-long committee after a day of class. The people who did come were also usually the most committed members of the club, i.e. the people who needed more training the least. I certainly sympathize with the idea that we need more training, because we always do. You can never have enough. But I don't think axing the weekly meeting is the best way to do that. But besides everything else, it's also a low-stakes way for everyone in the club to see each other and hang out for a little bit every week. which I think is really valuable and outside of a competitive MUN environment. And it keeps people informed because you and I both know how few people actually check the main chat, let alone the unmod. And I think more scrimmages is definitely a good idea, and I think it would be wise to pursue it. But the problem I've consistently run into in the 2.5 years I've been planning scrimmages is that there really just aren't that many free weekends. Hopefully next year scheduling will work out better, and the next vice president can clip this audio and then say, "I told you so." But when you take into account home games, breaks, conferences, finals, parents' weekend, etc., there's suddenly a lot fewer weekends in a semester than you think there are. Moving on to the demographic information, we can get a more detailed breakdown of the candidate's support. We'll look at dues status, class, time in the club, last election voted in, and the candidate the respondents voted for each office in the last election. We'll do the comms director deep dive first. Among dues-paying members, Shao has 57.1% of their support, Lynn has 14.3% support, and Murphy, Bishop, Turner, and Lance each have 7.1%. Non-dues payers are split evenly between Sinclair and Lynn. As a reminder, only dues-paying members are eligible to vote and run, though you can pay them at any point up to and including on election night. Moving on to a class breakdown, we'll start with first years. Their support stayed where it was last week, divided evenly between Lynn, Shao, and Turner. Shao leads among sophomores at 50%, while Lynn and Lance each have 25%. Shao also leads with juniors, followed by Sinclair and Bishop, each at 25%. Shao's performance among seniors is even stronger, with 75% to Lynn's 25%. No fifth-year seniors or graduate students responded to the poll. Additionally, since everyone who has been in the club for 7 to 8 semesters identified as a senior, I will only be going over their responses as part of the class-level analysis, not the time spent in the club. Among respondents who have been in the club for 1 or 2 semesters, Shao is the most popular candidate at 50% support, while Lynn and Turner each have 25%. 42.9% of those who have been in the club for 3 or 4 semesters support Shao, 28.6% support Lynn, while Sinclair and Lance each received 14.3%. The 5 to 6 semester demographic is 66.6% in favor of Shao and 33.3% in favor of Bishop. Among those who last voted in the 2024 FYOC election, Shao and Lynn are in a dead tie at 50-50. Among those who last voted in the 2024 FYOC election, Shao and Lynn are in a dead tie at 50-50. Those who haven't voted since the 2024 Comms Director Special election are more one-sided. Shao has 66.6% support, while Murphy, Lynn, and Turner each have 11.1%. For the respondents who haven't voted since the last general election, Bishop has managed to consolidate their vote, winning 100% this week. Sinclair has the unanimous backing of those who haven't voted since the 2023 presidential special election. Our first-time voter from last week did not vote this week. There's a joke here somewhere about American voter turnout. The candidates for the last comms director election were Chloe Randolph, the winner, and Sanaya Thomas. Thomas voters are split evenly between Shao and Bishop at 50% each, while Randolph voters favor a larger field. Shao has 62.5% support, while Murphy, Lynn, and Lance each have 12.5%. On to the membership chair demographics. There remains no clear frontrunner in the membership chair race. Fields, Not Sure, and Turner are tied with 14.3% support, while Bishop, Shao, McQueen, Barnett, Hahn, Murphy, Payne, and Lance each have 7.1%. For non-dues payers, Fields and Piketty are favored in equal measure, both at 50%. Looking at classes, first years are as split as they were last week, with Turner, McQueen, and Hahn each receiving 33% support. Among sophomores, 4 candidates received equal support: Fields, Shao, Payne, and Lance. The juniors are evenly split between Fields, Bishop, Piketty, and Not Sure, while the seniors are also divided between Fields, Turner, Barnett, and Murphy. Among those in the club for 1 or 2 semesters, Fields, Turner, Hahn, and McQueen each received 25% support. The 3 to 4 semester demographic slightly prefers Fields at 28.6%, while Not Sure, Shao, Piketty, Payne, and Lance each received 14.3%. The 5 to 6 semester crowd are split between Bishop, Barnett, and Not Sure at 33.3% each. 2024 FYOC voters prefer Fields at 50%, while McQueen and Hahn each have 25%. Those who last voted in the Comms Director special election have a wide field, with Not Sure and Turner at 22.2%, and Fields, Shao, Barnett, Murphy, and Payne at 11.1%. Those who have not voted since last April unanimously back Bishop, and against my will, I have the unanimous support of those who haven't voted since the 2023 presidential special election. The candidates for the last membership chair election were Nathaniel Barnett, the winner, and Tristan Fields. Fields' 24 voters are mostly unsure at 50%. Bishop and Murphy each have 25%, while Fields leads among Barnett 24 voters this time around at 28.6%. Turner, Shao, Barnett, Payne, and Lance each received 14.3% of the Barnett 24 vote. Moving right along to VP, they who rule with a mandate from heaven. Among dues-paying members, Barnett is the overwhelming favorite at 64.3% support, while his closest opponent is Fields at 14.3%, and another 14.3% are undecided. Bishop received 7.1% support. Non-dues payers are split evenly between Howard and Lance. Taking a look at each class's support, we see that the first-years are mostly backing Barnett at 66.6%, while 33.3% support Fields. The sophomores are even more strongly in favor of Barnett at 75%, while 25% back Howard. The juniors are evenly split, with 25% each in favor of Barnett, Lance, Bishop, and Not Sure. Barnett leads among the seniors as well, winning 50% support, while Fields and Not Sure each received 25%. Moving on to the extremely correlated, but still slightly different demographic of time spent in the club, Fields received 50% support from 1 or 2 semester monters, while Barnett and Not Sure received 25%. 3 to 4 semester monters favor Barnett at 57.1%, while 14.3% each support Howard, Lance, or are undecided. Those in the club for 5 or 6 semesters are evenly divided between Barnett, Bishop, and Fields. 2024 FYOC voters are mostly unsure at 50%, while 25% each back Fields and Barnett. Those who last voted in the Comms Director special election overwhelmingly back Barnett at 77.8%, while 11.1% each back Fields and Howard. Bishop is the unanimous favorite of those who haven't voted since last April. And unfortunately, I have the unanimous support of the dinosaur who hasn't voted since the November 2023 presidential special election. The candidates for the last VP election were Caleb Lance, the winner, Ryan Hahn, and Zane Howard. Howard 24 voters continue to unanimously back Barnett, and Hahn 24 voters are still unified behind Bishop. Lance 24 voters also strongly prefer Barnett at 71.4% support, while Fields and Not Sure each have 14.3%. Finally, let's take a look at the presidential polls. Among dues payers, Fields is the early favorite at 35.7% support, Barnett and McQueen are his closest opponents at 14.3%, while Payne, Bishop, Murphy, and Ward each have 7.1%. For non-dues payers, Barnett and Fields seem to be equally appealing, as both are at 50% support. Moving to a class view, we finally buck the trend of no 2 first-years liking the same candidate for any office, as Fields leads with 66.6% support, while Barnett has 33.3%. Sophomores are evenly divided between Barnett, McQueen, Payne, and Ward at 25% each. The juniors have started to coalesce behind Fields at 50%, while Barnett and Bishop each have 25%. The seniors are evenly split 4 ways between McQueen, Barnett, Fields, and Ward. Putting on a slightly different lens, we can look at time spent in the club, where we see that members in their first or second semester strongly prefer Barnett, who received 75% support, while Fields received 25%. 3 to 4 semester monters seem to have no particular favorites, as Fields and Barnett each received 28.6%, while McQueen, Payne, and Ward each received 14.3%. Fields, Bishop, and Murphy each received 33.3% support from the 5 to 6 semester gang. 2024 FYOC voters have a clear preference for Barnett at 75% support, while Fields received 25%. 2024 Comms Director special election voters largely went to Fields at 44.4% support, while McQueen follows at 22.2%, Barnett, Payne, and Murphy each received 11.1%. Bishop has the unanimous support of those who haven't voted since last April, and Fields has the unanimous support among 2023 presidential special election voters who responded to the poll. The candidates for the last presidential election were Ahmad Bahar, the winner, Jonah Dittis, and Eli Habersetzer. Habersetzer voters are split between Barnett and McQueen, Dittis voters are split between Murphy and Bishop, and Bahar voters largely back Fields at 60%, while McQueen and Ward each received 20%. Once again, this is only the second of 4 polls. These polls are entirely dependent on the otter system, and so it's very likely that one or more of these polls will be very inaccurate. If these polls are encouraging to you, that's fantastic, and you should get a friend to nominate you, or nominate yourself, for that office at tonight's meeting. Or maybe just wait it out. I have a decently long list of nominations that I texted to Ahmad since I won't be there, since tonight is the opening night of Angels in America, which you should all come see on Sunday with the MUN group that's coming. If you're hesitant about whether or not you should run, my first piece of advice would be to just stay friendly for now. You can always change your mind later, and that especially applies to the people that I have nominated. I would be happy to explain to you why I think you should run. You can always change your mind if you decide you really don't want to do it, but I promise you might do better than you think. On the other hand, if this episode discouraged you, that should be even more reason to nominate yourself tonight. If you enter the race early, you can guarantee you're on both of the remaining polls, which can help get your name out there, and the remaining 2 polls are only open to officially nominated candidates now that nominations have opened. Also, if you're running for comms director or membership chair, I'll be in touch in the next few days to arrange an interview, and if you enter the race too late, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to interview in time for the podcast. There are still 2 whole weeks until the election, 2 weeks that I'm sure will be far more eventful than the last 2, and everything can change like that. Finally, thank you to those of you who sent in a timestamp. I have all that I need now, but if I end up needing another one, I'll let you know. Make sure to tune in next week. I'll have interviews with each of the candidates for Communications Director and Membership Chair in addition to the regular polling. I'm Caleb Lance, your host and Vice President, and thank you for listening to the MUNPR Politics Podcast.